Welcome to the Do Good X podcast, a sanctuary from the entrepreneurial grind. Hosts Kimberly Danielle and Stephen Lewis, advocates for impactful entrepreneurship, guide you on the path where purpose meets business. Join us to slow down, reconnect, and explore the challenges of under-resourced entrepreneurs, uncovering the unique journey of building businesses that make a difference. Now, your hosts, Kimberly Danielle and Stephen Lewis.
So I want to welcome our listeners to the Do Good X podcast. I am Stephen Lewis, a catalyst for positive change in communities and business. And for over 2 decades, I've inspired leaders and entrepreneurs to live and work on purpose with intention, faith, and a commitment to their well-being. And I'd like to briefly introduce my co-host, Kimberly Danielle.
I'm Kimberly Danielle. Thank you, Stephen. I am a community builder, a coach, and a communication strategist who comes from generations of faith-driven entrepreneurs who believe that our purpose should drive us to contribute to the common good. And we are so excited for this episode today. We have our very first guest in our season of our podcast. And so today we have Martha Sylla Underwood on the show, and she is an innovator. She's a highly accomplished software technology industry veteran, a founder, an advisor, a mother, and so much more. And today with Martha, we are really diving into tech. We're diving into AI, entrepreneurship, being a Black woman in the tech industry. And speaking of which, did you know that last year in 2023, the tech industry comprised just of 25% of women, and within that, only 3% are Black women. And then when looking at tech startup founders, 15% are women. But the data around Black women is very hard to find because it is so low. So it's a gift to have Martha here with us today and to have her in the industry, really showing what a Black woman can do and be in a male-dominated space and paving the way for others. She has a storied career spanning from working at IBM in Florida to being in Silicon Valley and now in Birmingham, Alabama. Martha has developed enterprise solutions, created early versions of healthcare patient portals, and position startups for acquisitions, which that is so huge. And now in Alabama, she serves as the founder and CEO of Prismm, a company dedicated to revolutionizing the wealth transfer process at the end of life through technology. And this is amazing. Her company recently partnered with award-winning actor, Dr. Malik Yoba. So Martha, thank you so much for joining us today. You come with a wealth of experience, and we are grateful to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm like, you made me sound real good.
Because you are real good. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in. We've had previous conversations before, obviously. Well, not to listeners, they don't know that, but we've had previous conversations in other ways that you've been involved with Do Good X. And I've also recently read some articles around what really inspired your journey with Prismm and how that's so connected to your personal story. So can you just share with us a bit about your story and what led to the birth of Prismm? And within that, specifically share the problem you are addressing through Prismm.
Sure. So
within technology.
Yeah. So I'm a Gen Xer, and I take care of my boomer parents who are 85 and 86. And they live 700 miles from me. They live in Miami, Florida, where I was raised. And I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. And in 2017, Hurricane Irma hit Miami, and we were blessed that nothing happened to my family home, but my dad went over to the neighbor to help them out because a huge tree had fallen onto their roof. And my dad is, the consummate Caribbean man who thinks he can still do everything. And he was about in his late 70s at the time. He gets on the roof with his chainsaw and he tries to cut the tree off, and he slips and he falls and he goes unconscious. And My mom is frantic. She doesn't know what to do because my mom goes everywhere with them. So she was with them at the neighbor's house. And she calls me, 700 miles away. And there, with families, there's always someone that gets called. And I'm that person, myself and my older sister. And I felt helpless, but I really couldn't express that because she was already in a state of shock, right? Finally get him to the hospital. She hands the doctors, the phone to me, and they're asking me questions, but I can't really answer because I don't know, for one. And two, some of the things they really couldn't get into because I didn't have consent, right? I didn't have the proper paperwork. Even though my mom was there, she was just too distraught to be able to answer questions. And so it dawned on me because one of the questions they asked was like, does he have like his will? Like end of life stuff, like if something happens, because at the time we didn't know if he had internal bleeding, we didn't know what was happening. And we were blessed that he ended up just having cracked ribs and he is fine today. But during a span of 8 hours, it was kind of touch and go, like what's happening here? What if he doesn't make it? Where are the bank accounts? Where are all the information? Where's the life insurance policy? What's all this so that my mom could be okay? Because my mom and dad this year would be married 62 years and he's taking care of everything. Like she doesn't know where anything is. So asking her for that in the midst of her being distraught, even if she knew where something was, she wouldn't be able to tell us. She wouldn't be able to handle the administrative aspects of that. And so I said, being in technology, we can solve this. I need to be able to get access to all of this important information pretty quickly at my fingertips, no matter where I am. And so that's when Prism was born. And I always say Prism was born out of love for my parents because there's 7 of us and we're very close-knit families. So if anything happens to either one of them, we know that we will need time to grieve. And we did not want to be overly burdened by the administrative side of things, of having to go into the house and look for all of the documents. Even though my dad keeps, immaculate records, we'll start looking at it and we'll start crying because we're going through and starting to see just different things, right? Pictures here, birth certificate there, this document here. And so I said, let's solve this using technology. And so Prism was built to where we can now pull in all of their assets. We know where all of their money is, all of the financial accounts. We know where all of their important documents are: marriage certificates, deeds, car registrations, life insurance policy, living will, all of those things. And then all of their assets, like fine china. My dad has a medallion for the taxi, like all of those different things that we now have in Prism, locked it down and shared it with the family members that need to share it because everyone has different roles. Myself and my older sister handle financials, and then my other sisters handle the health. And so all of that information is in there and we share that information with who needs to see it. So we could keep privacy because my dad's like, I don't want them to see that, or I don't want them to see this. So we wanted to make sure that we took care of that. So I used all of my technology background, my experience with helping build products for the healthcare industry, for the banking industry, for the retail industry, to create something that can be basically a life planning tool for those of us that need it.
Thank you, Martha. That's amazing to see how your background, the different areas of your background and your own personal story really kind of intersected with one another and birthed Prism.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Because when you're looking at building a company, and, I've just been put on this path, right? It wouldn't leave me. Like, because I created something for just the family internally to use. But then when 2020 hit and we had COVID, and I had friends and sorority sisters and people at work saying, hey, Martha, I remember when you had this thing and you were having this issue and you created a product. Like, can I get on it? Can I use it? And the thing is, with people, we aren't as proactive or organized as we think we are, right? Just like me, I wasn't thinking about it. It was a crisis that made me think about it, which made me say, we need to be prepared before there's a crisis, because the worst time to prepare for a crisis is while you're in the crisis, right? And so that's when I said, okay, I guess this is the path that I should take. that God put me on, because I had a personal story. I created something to solve it. And then so many other people are going to need this with, the boomers kind of aging out and transitioning. And so much are on the Gen Xers because we got our own families. I got 2 boys, right? And so you might not be able to just pick up and leave and travel to wherever your family members are or who you're helping, provide care to handle that situation in person. And so how can you leverage technology to be able to manage those things through paperwork, through a portal, a secure portal, through having that information at your fingertips so that they can give the care that they need. You can make sure you know where the assets are and those things aren't lost.
I'm going to hand it over to Stephen to ask the next question.
Yeah, Martha, so earlier this year, your team was in the final stages of introducing an AI feature to Prism's products that will revolutionize how your clients catalog their assets. And you and I both know that the use of AI has continued to grow, and we don't foresee it going anywhere. So what do you see as your team's role and responsibility in your use of AI? And maybe more broadly speaking, what should be the responsibility of others interested in using AI in their entrepreneurial and social impact ventures?
Sure. So it's always about using AI for good, right? And the way we've leveraged AI in our platform is to make it easier for people to catalog their personal items. And so you can take a picture of a room and say, identify all of the things that are of value in this room. It might say 85-inch TV, it might say laptop computer, and it'll catalog that for you. 1, helping you save time by not having to type it in. And 2, also recognizing things that you might not have thought was of value, right? Like a vintage armoire that grandma or grandpa might have, or some fine china that they might not have thought was worth anything. AI can pick up and catalog that for you within Prism. And that's a feature that we're finalizing and putting into the system. And also being able to take pictures of documents and put that information in there as well to just make it as seamless and easy for you as possible. Because again, older generation, they aren't as technically savvy as the younger generation is. They're digital natives. It takes some time for the older generation to be able to work through the technology to catalog their information. So we wanted to make it as easy as taking a picture, because they could take pictures of their grandkids. They can do that. And so if you could take a picture, then you can catalog this information into Prism. And the larger responsibility that we have, one is a couple of things. I would say as Black and Brown entrepreneurs is to use it. Make sure that we are using AI in training the models with our culture, with what we like and some of the things that we're building so that it can learn and not be biased. Right? Because it's all about who uses it. I talk about training and learning how to be a prompt engineer and prompting properly. There's a lot to be said about that because we need more people that look like us inputting into the different models, because every day there is another AI product that hits the market. Right. And I have seen some great uses of AI. I think there is a company called Track AI for disabilities where it can track eye movement for children and help identify if there's going to be any issues or they might have a propensity to become blind, those things, right? There's also cancer screenings where they can detect cancer earlier. All of these things are how AI can actually be used for good. And we want to continue to be participants in that to make sure that we are designing products and leveraging AI for good.
That's good, because a lot of the resistance is about using it. But in order to yield the results that we desire, we have to use it. So that's really good. I mentioned earlier in the episode about some of the data around Black women in tech and tech founders who are women. I want to hear a little bit about the challenges that you face as a Black woman in the tech industry. And for people who are listening who are on the same or similar trajectory. Share with them how you navigated those challenges in ways that might be instructive or insightful for their own
Sure.
journeys.
So one of the things is, I would say the main challenge is being the only and not having someone in leadership that looked like me that I can go to for guidance to help navigate that particular environment that I might have been in, right? And so that's a challenge. And one of the things that I did was I looked outside of the four walls that I had to go to every day to networking events to find other women, even though they might not have been in tech, but they were in leadership that can help me navigate or guide me with some of the strategies to employ in corporate, right? That's big, expanding your network and finding people that look like you that might be in leadership roles that where you might want to go, even though it might not be in tech, because there are just some things across the board that is relevant, like how to present yourselves in meetings, like how to leverage meetings, right? People go to meetings all of the time. And as women, and especially Black women, sometimes we might hold our voice back and not put forth an idea for fear that it won't be heard or to be stolen. And so how to navigate things like that and how to gain the confidence to be able to one, have a confidence in your ability that, yes, my idea is valid and I should voice it here. But just having someone else that looks like you say, I've dealt with that and this is how I handled it. I made this friend or I made this ally that can echo me, that says, oh, that was Martha's idea, or Martha had a great point. Why don't you bring that up again? Right? Those are just small little strategies that you can kind of put into place. But it was difficult being the only, because going into a meeting or coming into the office or meeting with the client, typically, I kind of rose up the ranks pretty quickly. So I was in leadership. And so I'd come in and they would think that I'm an analyst or, an entry-level person while I'm there to really lead the meeting. And I was actually just telling this story the other day that I would start to purposely go to meetings late. Because people were just like, why is Martha late? But it's because I wanted everyone to say, well, we're waiting on Martha to start the meeting. So then when I walked into the meeting, precedent was already set. It was already set that, oh, she is the decision maker. She is the one that we're going to have to win over for this account, or she is the one that we're going to have to talk to about capacity or this new project or to approve this budget, right? Because if I'm there, and I typically was the first one there, I'd be there early, and it's just like, well, okay, Martha, small talk. And how did you do this? And how did you do that? And I'd start to try to talk about the things that were relevant to the meeting. And they'd just be like, no, well, we'll wait for, the stakeholders to come. And I'm like, well, I am the stakeholder, right? And so those were some of the challenges that can get frustrating, but finding other women, again, even if it's outside of your industry or outside of your company, is invaluable, because those are the people that can help you navigate once you step into that room and give you the confidence, or you can text or call when you need to. That just kind of gives you that extra boost that you need.
That's good. And, when I think about, other women and the challenges, it reminds me of what I heard Ryan Wilson had mentioned, who is the CEO and co-founder of The Gathering Spot, is about how the barriers of entrepreneurship, in particular for Black and brown folks and women, and specifically that is the barriers are not as about starting as much as it's about scaling. And so with your background beyond Prism in positioning startups for acquisition, what barriers have you seen entrepreneurs in general, Black women in particular, face in their ability to scale and position their business well for acquisition?
I'd say the main thing is the networking and the access to the business and the contracts. What I've seen from of our counterparts is that they would refer them and say, hey, oh, you got this platform. I know this executive at this company that I'm going to connect you to because I know that they're looking for enterprise level software. And they walk you in the door. Right. And you don't have just one of that. You have 5 of that or 10 of that. Right. And so that is critical to scaling, because typically the other thing that I've seen is they would want to put Black women founders in a program or in an accelerator or in a workshop. and maybe give them a grant, a $5,000 or $10,000 grant. That might help them with their business. But what's really helpful is a signed contract, which helps them then deliver the product, right? Because the thing is, get the contracts to us and then let us either succeed or fail. We're not saying that if the product doesn't do what it says it does, that you need to keep it. Go ahead and cancel the contract. But I bet you will find that the product does exactly what it says it does, and it will probably exceed your expectations. And I think that that's one of the biggest hurdles and the differentiators between some Black founders and them scaling and our counterparts, because they're networking, they're referring business, and they're walking contracts in the door for them. And we're not necessarily getting that. And so it's harder for us from a sales perspective to get to the closed deal. And our sales cycles are longer because we're hurdling biases. We're hurdling, the doubt. Is this really built like it needs to be built? Did they pass compliance? Do they have the security in check? All of those things that our counterparts may have to deal with, but not as deeply as we do. And so that's the differentiator where it comes to scaling, because for scale, when you talk about acquisition, they're looking at revenue that you bring in. How many contracts? What's your annual recurring revenue? What's your monthly recurring revenue? And contracts give you that. Grants don't. And that's the biggest differentiator that I would see, when you talk about that. It's access to the deals is really what it comes down to.
Thank you, Martha. That is well said and needs to be heard
and on point.
On so many levels by so many people.
Yeah,
it's on point. I'm going to shift just a little bit. Each episode we host with a guest, we will have a special segment. And today we're going to have that special segment with Martha around our resource roundup. And so here we will explore various resources and practical tools that we equip and support underrepresented social entrepreneurs as you build your business. So, Martha, can you tell us what is one piece of technology that has been a game changer for your
Chat
business?
GPT, OpenAI. I'm like, AI is it. I will say most recently, Gamma app. It's a AI app that creates presentations from a prompt. It's pretty amazing. I was able to create a presentation within like 2 minutes, full end to end, beautiful. I'm like, I only had to make like 2 edits. So that's a game changer. It's called Gamma.app.
Wow, that is a game changer.
It just came out last week, and I was just like, oh. I mean, before that, Chat GPT, and OpenAI absolutely was a game changer with all of the tools that they have. But most recently, I'd say I'd been doing a lot of presentations. Gamma.app is definitely a time saver, and it's high quality.
Okay, so let me ask you a follow-up question. For aspiring entrepreneurs who do not have any tech background, but have an idea for a tech business, how can they get started in pursuing their business idea?
So funny enough, I'm going to say ask AI. And I would say put in a prompt and ask Chat GPT. That's one. The second thing is there are some thought leaders out there. One that I follow is Andrew Ng. He is on Twitter and he has his own site. He does a lot around machine learning, data science, and AI. And he puts out some really good content. I'd say that that's the leader in that space from AI and how to get started. Yes, from beginner, intermediate to advanced. And then for fun, I would say follow Aluna.ai on Instagram. They put out a lot of really good content as well that gives you practical advice of how to use it. And just also, they're always on top of like the new things that come out, the new cool things that come out, whether it's image generators or just new tools that you could use, new prompting tools that can really help someone get ideas around businesses, but then also tutorials on how to use it as well.
Let me ask you this, Martha. What I have learned with AI is that when putting in a prompt or a question, the way you put it in is going to have an impact on the results that you receive. So can you give us an example when you say use AI for this? Can you give us an example of a prompt that someone might put in?
Sure. So typically I give it a role to ask. So let me think of something. Okay. So if I'm to say, I want to create a new curriculum, if I'm a teacher, it's like, you are an expert in curriculum building for K through 12 students in education. You've been in education over 30 years. You have deep knowledge around curriculum building. That's the first prompt, right? That's the first thing you want to say. Then the next thing you say is, I'd like to build a curriculum specifically for third graders to increase their proficiency around reading, right? And then you can say, give me 5 ideas on how I can do that. Then follow up with, ask me, before you give me the ideas, ask me any other questions that you need to know to help you answer this question to the best of your ability. And then once you put that in, it'll ask you questions. And they're like, I didn't think of that. I didn't think of that. Mm-hmm. And now you can ask different questions, right? Now you can answer those different questions, and then it will give you an answer back. And I like to follow up with, is that all? Have I missed anything? Is there anything else that you can think of that will make this curriculum better? And then it typically comes back with a lot more. That is how you kind of do that chain of thought, prompting of, here are the different steps. Who are they? Like, tell them what role they should assume. Give it what you're trying to do. Make sure they ask you clarifying questions. Get the answer, and then ask them, is there anything else that you can do or say to me that makes this even better? And that's the way you could kind of do it.
So we got to ask better questions, and we had to be more specific about the questions we ask. All right, so Martha, yes, we want to move to this last round, which is our round that we call off the cuff. So we have a series of questions that we have that we haven't typically shared with our guests that we'll ask at a fast pace. And here we want to think about the first thought that comes to mind that is an uncensored response. So what's the best advice that you received on your entrepreneurial journey?
Just keep going. It's hard, but just keep going. And you would think that advice is really simple, but there are a lot of times where you're like, this is hard, right? And there are those days. And I go back to that, just keep going, because then the next day something else happens, something good happens. And you're like, see, if I would have stopped, I wouldn't have taken that next step. Right. And so that's actually one of the best advice that I got, is just keep going.
What is one of your go-to practices or rituals to slow down, center, and connect with yourself?
So I am a big user of like YouTube, the calming music. And so I have shifted from Interstellar. That soundtrack typically gets me in a nice calm mood, and it gets me in a very creative mood, but it brings me back down, right? And the reason why I love Interstellar so much is because it was written about the love for his son, right? Really, that song was written about the love for his children, and I have sons, so it just resonates, and it's just a deep song. So I would put that on, and it helps me. But I kind of switched to this new guy. I think his name is called Malton, and he has a handpan, which is very calming, puts me in my meditative state, and brings me back to center. Y'all got easy ones. I thought I was going to get some hardball ones where I'm going to be stumped. Like...
Well, you are our first guest, so we want to go easy on you, but they will become more challenging.
I appreciate that.
How much of your success would you contribute or attribute to your faith versus your own grit, will, and hustle?
I'd say 80-20. 80 faith, 20 grit, hustle, right? Because faith is also about mindset and belief, right? And so that's the biggest piece of it. You do have to execute, but you also have to believe that you can execute and you can keep going. And so I would give it an 80-20. Like it's all really faith and mindset for me, knowing that it's gonna work out.
We have one last one for you.
Complete this sentence. Because of my entrepreneurial endeavors, communities will be or more able to do what?
They will, communities will be able to benefit from the lifelong hard work of their family members, their grandmothers, their grandpas, their mothers, their fathers, because they would have planned to transfer the wealth to the next generation that can be recycled into the community for good.
Talk about a generational
legacy.
Talk about legacy, generational impact, all of that. Thank you so much for your work. For you all who are listening, if you have been enjoying this conversation with Martha and you find value in the resources that she is sharing, first, go find her on LinkedIn or Martha, wherever you desire for them to find you. It will be in the show notes as well. And we also invite you to go to dogoodx.org/podcast. Here you can join our Do Good X LinkedIn community where we share tools and tips, resources, and we provide entrepreneurs and change makers with a community of support. And Martha is also a part of the community, so you can ask her questions if you join. We hope to see you there. Martha, thank you so much for taking the opportunity to join us today as our very first guest. Your work is so valued and it is so important coming from somebody who is I have 9 siblings. And so there's a lot to prepare for and thinking ahead. And so I personally appreciate what you're up to and what Prism is providing for families and for people. And I thank you for sharing your knowledge with our listeners.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Martha. So now this is a mystery segment of our episode. And Kim, I just want to ask you, what is one go-to practice or ritual that you use to slow down, to center, and connect with yourself?
So for me, I find nature to be very restorative and helps me to find my center, specifically getting out away from distractions, putting my phone on do not disturb or leaving it, if I feel comfortable doing that, leaving it somewhere, and really just being present to what's around me and what I'm hearing show up, what spirit is sharing with me in those moments. And it even leads to just honestly noticing flowers bloom or nest or the sounds that are around me. So I find that to be so grounding and a way that I just quiet all the noise that's going on specifically in my own head. And it's something simple that I can do regularly, even during the workday, just taking 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes to walk outside. So that is definitely one of my consistent go-to practices. What about you?
I typically do a mindful pause every morning, and it really is just an opportunity to pause, to express gratitude for the days to come, and then to just to take a moment, elongated moment, maybe 10-15 minutes to listen to myself into deeper expression, for all that has come, all that I'm able to accomplish, and how I want to show up in this space, my work life, personal life, in that kind of way in which I kind of harmonize myself with what the day will bring. So I do that. And, there are other things that I do, but that's one of the most important ones that I go to every day.
Mindful pause. For those of you who are listening, I invite you to think about what are your go-to practices or rituals to slow down, to center, to connect with yourself. As entrepreneurs, it can be a practice of being on the grind. But I want to invite you to have a practice of slowing down so that you can move forward more intentionally and mindfully. So you found this segment because you stuck around just a few seconds past the main episode. Continue to do that, and you'll hear from us a little bit more after our longer segments, or our longer episodes. We look forward to journeying with you, and we hope you join us next time.
Thank you for listening to the Do Good X podcast. To continue the conversation or access our resources, visit www.dogoodx.org. Join us again for conversations that will nourish your soul, ignite your dreams, and empower you to build an impactful business, one intentional step at a time. Until then, keep striving, thriving, and doing good.